Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, it is finally starting to feel like fall for a lot of different reasons around the homestead, but finally the weather is starting to cool down a little bit. Last night we actually got down into the mid-40s for our low.
It was amazing to open up the front door in the morning and have it be a little bit chilly. I actually wore a hoodie to do chores this morning. It just felt so nice. It was such a great change.
Now, it's not going to last for long. At the beginning of next week, we're supposed to be back up to almost 90 degrees. But we're going to take just this little bit of fall weather and enjoy it while we can. Then we're going to get another warm up, but fall will be here for good in no time at all. There are a couple things that always kind of mark the start of fall here on the homestead. One is that gardening season is starting to wrap up and some of those later producing things in the garden are ready to harvest, like our winter squash. The other thing for me personally and for Sarah this year is that deer hunting starts. Then September 15th every year, archery season starts here in Missouri, and we try to take full advantage of archery season to get a jump start on the season.
Just this weekend, Kevin got his first deer. It was the first deer of the family.
Right, it was a nice doe.
Yes, it was a nice doe. We've processed that, and so tonight we're going to take advantage of some of that precious, wonderful red meat. But also, we're going to be taking advantage of one of the winter squash that we harvested.
So tonight we're going to be doing kind of a dual cooking video. Sarah's going to show you one of her favorite fall recipes, and I'm going to show you one of mine. We're going to combine them together into an awesome meal that we like to eat this time of year every year. So we're going to get started first with Sarah's portion, which is an awesome butternut squash soup.
Well, we are going to get started on some butternut squash soup. We have harvested a Canada crookneck squash. We've been growing these for the last 3 years or so because they grow so well. Now I'm just gonna pause for a moment so everybody can giggle and snicker about the shape of this. And then we're gonna move on because these are actually the most fantastic, sweetest butternut squash type of winter squash. The seeds are from Baker Creek, and the reason we grow them is because they are pretty much resistant to squash bugs, and that's important for us. So anyway, the first thing that we need to do is to cook this butternut squash. There are several different ways that you can do that, but I just recently found that some people basically just stick these right in the oven whole and cook them like this, and that's what I'm gonna do today. I saw that on Instagram from my friend Ruth Ann Zimmerman. She has a great Instagram account and I love following her. She actually just sticks them right in the oven just like this and doesn't cover them, but my mom covers them with foil. And the recipe we're doing today actually is her recipe. So I'm gonna do it the way Mom does. So I'm gonna cover this butternut squash in foil. I have the oven preheating to 400 degrees. And we're gonna put it in there for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Now I am gonna put this on a baking pan in case it starts to drip so it won't drip onto the bottom of my stove and make a yucky mess. But we're just gonna put it in there just like this and it will be done by the time we're ready to put it into the pot. Well, while the squash is baking in the oven, we're gonna get some of the other ingredients chopped up and put into our soup pot so we can cook them down also. In the end, this is gonna be a nice, smooth, pureed soup. So we need to cook everything else down. So it's pretty much mushy and it can be whipped up and blended with our immersion blender. So we're gonna start off with 2 apples. I'm gonna core them and then I'm going to chop them into little squares so that they easily cook down in our pot. So after I have the cores out, I'm just gonna cut these really in circles, slices, so that I can put them in my Vidalia chopper, which I absolutely love. I use it all the time, and that's just gonna make this pretty easy. Put these in my Dutch oven. And then we're gonna do the same thing with one medium-sized onion. Makes it so easy. Okay, into the Dutch oven it goes. We're also going to add 6 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to peel the garlic and then smash them with a knife to break them open, and then they'll cook down really nicely in the pot there. Now, these ingredients that we have in here, we're gonna cook them down on the stovetop until they're nice and soft. But there's no fat in here, so I'm gonna put a couple tablespoons of home rendered lard in there, and that will help those cook down. The juices will be released, and it will be a really good environment for them to cook down into some really wonderful ingredients to incorporate into this soup. So a couple tablespoons of whatever fat you have available. We like to use home rendered lard. So let's get this on the stovetop and start cooking it down. So it looks like they're good and mushy. They got a little extra browned, but I think it'll be fine. It'll just add a little bit more flavor. I'm gonna turn off the heat and remove these from the heat because we're going to peel and deseed our squash so we can move on to making this into soup. So let's open this squash. It is cooked down completely. It's nice and soft. And I've also let it sit for a while so that it's cool enough to touch. So we're just gonna take it out of the foil. Now in this type of squash, the seeds and like the seed guts are only in this bottom bulb portion. So all of this long portion is just meat inside of there, just the, pulp of the squash. So to help myself out a little bit, I just cut that a little bit. We're just gonna peel the peel off. Okay, now on to the bulbous part. We're just gonna peel the skin off of there too. In some areas it comes off really easily, but in others it's a little more tricky, so maybe I could have left it in for 10 more minutes or so, but it'll be okay. Now, normally when I make squash like this, I cut it completely in half and then take out the seeds and the guts first, and then just roast it just like that. But peeling it is really pretty difficult when it's still fresh like that. And a lot of times it's really hard to cut in half because it's so hard. So I think this is a pretty easy way to do it. I might continue doing it all the time this way. So let's cut this in half and open it up. It's kind of falling apart, so we'll see how easily the guts come out of here. I'm just gonna scoop all this gooey stuff into another bowl because sometimes when I do this, Samantha likes to go through the seeds and then roast them in the oven as a nice snack. So she might want to do that this weekend. I think I have that clean enough, so I'm just going to transfer this onto this cutting board that I just brought over to help me. And then we're going to put this in the pot and add the rest of our ingredients. Okay, over in our Dutch oven, we're going to add all of that squash pulp. We're also going to add 3 cups of chicken broth. This is homemade chicken broth. I just made it. It's been in the refrigerator. And then some seasonings. I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt. We use pink Himalayan salt. I just pretty much measure with my hand. And next we're going to add curry powder, which might sound a little strange, but it is so good. 2.5 teaspoons of curry powder. I'm just going to put a couple shakes of black pepper, not a whole lot. About 2 tablespoons of lime juice. We're going to mix that in. We're going to turn the heat up and bring this to a low boil before we blend it. Well, it's looking delicious. It has just started to boil, so I'm actually going to turn off the heat right now, and we're going to blend it up. Now be careful when you're blending hot soups and things because it can splatter and you can burn yourself. So just be careful. I'm going to use an immersion blender. You could also transfer this into a blender or Vitamix or whatever you have, but this seems to work the best for me. Now the final step for this soup, which is gonna just make it so luxurious and creamy, is we're going to add, I have about 1.5 cups of cream to this, and then we're gonna mix it in. So this soup it's ready to be served. It's nice and hot. I am just gonna put the cover on here to keep it nice and warm while Kevin makes the rest of our dinner.
All right, on to the second part of our meal. Tonight with the soup we're going to be having venison backstrap that we're going to pan fry. Now you may notice that I have a little thing on my finger here. While we were actually processing this deer, I slipped and I cut my finger pretty bad on the tip of my finger. And so I have to wear this little thing on my finger until it heals up. So we don't want anything to get on the meat. So I have this little rubber thing over the tip of my finger to keep everything nice and clean. So for those of you who don't know what backstrap is, if you can picture the back of a deer, the backstrap runs kind of from the shoulder blades down to the hip. There's a piece of meat, a long piece of meat on both sides of the spine. That's what the backstrap is, and that's what we're going to be cooking tonight. We're going to be cooking just one side of the backstrap from this dough. So let's go ahead and get this out. You can see what gorgeous red meat this is. And again, this is one side of the backstrap. So we're going to cut this in half. Set that off to the side. And we're just going to cut this into medallions. I like to cut them about a 1/2 inch thick. So this is the second half of the backstrap. You can see this is a good amount of meat. Now, the backstrap is really one of the prime cuts on a deer, at least as far as I'm concerned. We pretty much grind the entire deer other than the backstraps and the tenderloins. The tenderloins are also very good, but the backstraps I think are just as tender, honestly, on a deer. And you can see just how lean this meat is. This is really by far the best cut of meat on the entire deer, I think, and this is a meal that we absolutely love. So I'm going to just finish cutting these up, and then we'll move on to getting ready to pan fry these. Alright, the next step in this is going to be getting some flour ready so we can toss these in flour before we pan fry them. Now this is nothing special at all. We're going to use some organic all-purpose flour. You can use regular all-purpose flour if that's what you have. I'm going to start with about, I don't know, a cup in here. Can always add more later, but I tried to not waste any. So put about a cup of flour in there. We're going to put a little bit of salt. I don't know, 1.5 teaspoons or so. I'm like Sarah, I don't really measure. And we're going to put some black pepper in there as well. And then we're just going to mix that around. Alright, we're going to take this all over to the stove and get ready to pan fry these. Alright, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get some lard going in a big cast iron skillet. And we're going to want quite a bit of lard because this is a pretty big pan, and that way we can do a lot of this at once. We might need to add more as we go along, so we'll leave that out. While that is heating up, we'll get our first batch of meat ready. What I like to do is just leave the flour in a bowl like this, and we'll put about, I don't know, 10 or so pieces of meat in the flour. That looks good. I think that was about 15 pieces. We'll put a cover on. And we'll just shake everything up real good. And we'll let that sit until our lard is heated up in the pan. Alright, our oil is heated up. And now we're going to start putting our pieces of venison in. We're going to fry these about 2 or 3 minutes on each side. They're pretty thin, so they're going to get done pretty quickly. Alright, these are just about ready to flip, so alright, we're going to let those for about another 2 or 3 minutes on that side. Now, while these are cooking, I just wanted to real quick show you guys this awesome leather handle cover that was just recently sent to us by a company called Hard Mill from a company out of Seattle that sells on Etsy. They sent us 2 of these in 2 different sizes. We have no affiliation with them other than they sent us these to try, and they are awesome. So we've tried other leather handle covers before for cast iron, and they're always really hard or they just don't work very well. These are a nice soft leather. They work well on just about every size pan that we have. You guys know that we use a lot of cast iron, and these work really well. So check them out. They're called Hard Mill, and I believe that they sell on Etsy. We're just going to put a little bit of extra salt on top of those, set those off to the side. We'll get the next round going in our oil.
Okay guys, dinner is all finished. We have all of the venison medallions finished and our butternut squash soup. So we're gonna plate up and we're so excited to have dinner. So both of us will have some of these amazing backstrap medallions. Kevin likes his with my homemade barbecue sauce. We'll give some to me. I like them with my homemade ketchup. Let's serve up some of this soup. It is so wonderful. I hope you guys try it. The addition of the curry powder is so amazing. And that cream just adds really a nice, like, luscious taste. One for Kevin. One for me. And even though we don't have our kids in our videos, Samantha is home. So I'll fix her a plate too. It is officially time for dinner.
Well, you guys, nothing says fall around the homestead like a meal like this. We are so happy that you joined us today. I do think sometimes as homesteaders or as farmers, we overlook the importance of hunting. Not only does it keep animal populations under control out here in the country, but it is also a very good source of great, fresh, organic meat for our families. This meal is 100% either from our property or, I guess it's, well, except for maybe the onions in the soup,
Yep.
Everything else came right from here. We are starving. It's getting late. I don't know if you guys can see the clock, but it's getting late in the day. We need to eat. Thank you guys so much for coming. Don't forget, as always, the absolute best way that you can help us is by sharing our videos on all of your social media. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you leave and give this a thumbs up. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.